Hi, everybody. Welcome. So, just to make sure everybody's in the right room, we're talking about lived experience service user engagement this morning. Before we get into introductions or anything, I just wanted to start us off in a good way with a land acknowledgement of the space we're sharing today. So I acknowledge the land we're meeting on today is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabeg, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. I also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit and the Williams Treaty signed with multiple Mississaugas and Chippewa bands. I live on Williams Treaty territory, so I always make sure that I include that one in there. As a settler, I'm very happy to share this space with you and hope that we can share it in a good way and talk about our shared aims as we talk about working with our service users, because we all breathe the same air, use the same land, rely on the same waters, and hopefully we can move through this morning with that same spirit. So thank you all for being here. We'll get to introduce ourselves.
Morning, everyone. My name is Edward Pereira. I currently work with the Shelter Network. I'm a community health ambassador, team lead, and I've been in this position for just over a year.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Maisha, and I'm the project coordinator for the health program at the Toronto Shelter Network. I support the coordination of COVID-19 vaccination and other health promotion initiatives that involve shelter clients. Thanks so much for the opportunity to speak today.
Thanks.
Yeah, there's a feedback coming.
Oh, if we separate, is that going to be better?
Yeah, I mean, the podium mic is definitely going to be easier for the but yeah.
Okay.
If it's further apart, that should be.
Okay. Well, we'll try it like I hear the.
Yeah.
It sounds like I've got a loose mouthpiece or something happening. All right. Should I move over to the podium mic? Would that work better?
Maybe try that.
Sounds good.
Can't hurt to try.
All right.
Shut this off.
See, this is already that spirit of collaboration that we're working on.
See a button to turn it off.
Do you think the room is small enough that we could talk without the mics? That might help.
It would, but there's a recording.
Gotta go on.
We're live streaming.
I apologize.
Yeah. Oh, well, how about, it's a little better. There's a hum, but is this working okay?
No, the hum is just the HVAC. It's not. It's
Oh, okay.
the HVAC is because of the distance of those microphones because they're a bit further away. So
Okay, sounds good. My name is Tarek Bacchus, and I'm the manager of the City of Toronto's COVID-19 Transition and Relocation Unit. But I'll be speaking about a lot of different projects that the City of Toronto has undertaken with service users. So let me just get to some objectives for today. So today we're going to be looking at a number of recent examples of engagement work that the Toronto Shelter Network and the Shelter Support and Housing Administration have conducted primarily over the last year, in some cases together and in some cases independently. We'll be looking to these examples and the approaches taken, the rationale behind some of those decisions, and the outcomes of the engagement in contributing to system planning efforts. Over the course of these examples, we'll also try to draw out some of the lessons and recommendations that these experiences have led to. I should pause here to note that I am relatively new in this role. So I just started in this capacity in the summer. So today's presentation kind of came with the job. So I've got the challenge today of presenting work done by other individuals, but they have been very generous with their time and giving me a good briefing on everything. So I did want to take a moment just to thank and honor the work of some brilliant folks I work with: Kira Cartillo, Ajwa Aful, Kriti Chatna, Karen Tizard, Meredith Kratzman, Lauren Kimura, and Annabella Weinberg, who were instrumental in many of the projects that we'll be talking about, or I'll be talking about today. So if there's anything that sounds out of whack, blame it on me, not on their work. So let's get into some of the pieces here. So why is service user engagement so important? So apart from what's up there, everything starts and ends with our service users. Our service users are our primary experts in their own experiences. And just like everybody's appreciating this week what a resource this conference is and how great it is to have all this experience and knowledge and expertise in the room, all of us have access to hundreds and hundreds of experts over the course of our work. And it would just be silly to leave that expertise on the table and not leverage it to our shared aims. It also keeps us connected to our organizational missions. Regardless of the types of services we work in, whether it's shelter, drop-in, health services, anything else really, we're working for the people who access our services, and their aims should be tied together with our planning and program design. It can also keep you abreast of changing needs. It may be that you've got the end goals perfectly lined up, but there are a number of needs that need to be addressed along the way. So the pandemic is a great example of something that's created all kinds of needs that we haven't necessarily anticipated previously. So working with folks directly experiencing them, we can get a good lens on the scope and the impact of those changes. Another feature of engagement is that you can get access to some voices that you don't always hear. So in the work that we all do, we know that there are voices that are loudest. They let us know exactly what they think of the work we're doing on a regular basis. And that's super valuable, but it's not the only perspective. And it's not necessarily representative feedback either. Along the same lines, you can narrow your focus as much as is valuable to what you're looking at. So if you want to hear from a particular group to make sure that they've been included in your program design, you can build processes specifically to work with that group or, subgroup of a smaller group. Very importantly to all of this is that there's a benefit to service users that we can share by participating in this process in and of itself. It's a good experience that allows people an opportunity to pause and reflect when many folks that I've worked with are often in such a mode of survival that opportunity to just think about what they're experiencing and value that experience is a rare one at times. It can also build great transferable skills, especially in the case of longer-term engagement processes like peer programs and advisory committees. It can allow people to use skills that they've spent a lifetime cultivating but maybe haven't used in a while. We know that the folks we work with come from every kind of background, so there's a lot of skills that just maybe need a little dusting off, but they're there underneath. And we see them when we do this work too. If you're compensating people for their time and expertise, as we all should be, it can also provide financial resources. And one piece is that it also provides connection. There's connection to other people involved in these projects that can counteract some of the serious risks associated with isolation and depression that our folks live with on a regular basis. Now, all those benefits are if we do engagement in a good way. There is lots of opportunity to make mistakes. So mistakes can include starting with conclusions in mind, entering into an engagement process, expecting a certain outcome, expecting to hear certain things. That's going to bias things. And I'm going to really try hard not to make this like a research methods session, but that's one of the big errors. Not engaging the right groups or not engaging in the right way. You might realize that you really needed to hear about something from somebody, and by the time you realize it, they're no longer interested in talking to you because you've already snubbed them. So that's a real risk too. Treating populations as homogenous is another risk. So there's no one homeless person, there's no one Black person, there's no one Indigenous person, there's no one type of any identifier. So we really have to dig down and get individual experiences as much as we can. And then maybe the most common and cardinal mistake that we can make is not using the information we gather to inform our development of programs and systems. If we just collect it and then it dies in our files, then it's worse than if we never collected it in the first place, because now we've taken people's time and raised their expectations, and we've given them nothing back. So what these risks can lead to, what these mistakes can lead to are missing key information, which can lead to investing resources, which are very finite in many of our organizations, into the wrong areas, disempowering service users, and eroding trust instead of building it. So without further ado, that's kind of our place setting. We're going to move on to case studies. But just a word on these mistakes. You will make mistakes. You will definitely, guaranteed 100% make mistakes. As Dr. Ross was talking about this morning, we just need to practice some radical self-forgiveness as a harm reduction method to make sure that we, do your best every time, figure out what you got wrong, learn from it, and keep going. And with that in mind, we won't get into it. We're going to talk about all these projects this morning, so I won't rhyme them off, and we'll get going with the COVID-19 transition and engagement strategy. So before I hand it off to our experts who really engage with this, just for some stage setting, the beginning of the year, my predecessor in that role was working on a broad engagement plan to help inform the COVID transition planning. And a third-party consultant was brought in to do some of that work, but they didn't have the expertise with our service users. So that's where TSN came in, and I will hand it over to them now.
And also, if you did want to stay there, like with the laptop, if you speak closer to the mic, we should be able to avoid the,
Feedback? Yeah.
Then I can turn down the level of mic. We should be able to.
Okay. Hi, everyone.
That's why I think she was saying if you guys want to take the
Stay
podium.
there, if you want to, like, if you need the laptop, if you need.
Yeah, we do need to.
But do you just, for the tabletop mics, you just need to be a little bit closer, and then I can turn down my levels, and we can avoid the feedback.
Okay. Is this better? Yeah? Okay. Great. Thanks. Just to provide a bit of context, so during the COVID-19 pandemic, the City of Toronto opened temporary hotel sites for shelter clients to physically distance themselves and to minimize the spread of the virus. So in supporting the transition planning for the temporary sites, approximately 200 client experience surveys were administered to shelter residents to really integrate their feedback in the decision-making process. So in terms of methodology, 6 sites were pre-selected through convenient sampling, whereby the most responsive sites were selected. So these were sites that showed the most interest and response in response to a general call to participate in the survey process. And the number of clients per site were also pre-selected, and this was based on the total number of clients at these respective sites. So we were, I think, looking at 14 to 16% from each of these sites. In terms of recruitment of participants, this was primarily done through staff and our community health ambassadors. Our community health ambassadors engaged with the participants on site, and they debriefed them on the consent process and walked them through the survey and offered them an honorarium in response in compensation for their time. We had about 7 community health ambassadors administer approximately 200 surveys within a span of 2 weeks, so it was quite an endeavor. And community health ambassadors were also responsible for inputting the survey results onto SurveyMonkey, and as Tarek mentioned, we had a third-party consultant who consolidated and analyzed the findings and reported the findings as well.
In talking about our challenges and lessons that we learned, working with frontline staff and site leads to ensure that sufficient space was available for the surveys while also maintaining the respondents' privacy and anonymity. This was sometimes a challenge when working with the constraints of COVID-19. And with convenient sampling, the respondents may have had different experiences, they may have different cultural backgrounds, and it can be difficult to sometimes obtain a snapshot or a complete picture of what you're looking for with the surveys. We used a hybrid approach, which was used due to both the time constraints and the accessibility issues. Some of the surveys were completed electronically, while others were completed on a paper copy when collected, and then they were later added to SurveyMonkey.
So moving on to our next project, the Peer Vaccination and Health Promotion Project. So just to provide a bit of context, our initial primary focus was vaccination promotion and to really mitigate misinformation and mistrust in the vaccine and to improve vaccine confidence and vaccination uptake across the sector. So we conducted a needs assessment with vaccine site leads across the 4 sectors that we work with, women's, men's co-ed, family, and youth. And this was to really help identify the barriers and facilitators to vaccination uptake. So some of the barriers that were identified included lack of education awareness, mistrust in not only the vaccine, but healthcare more broadly. And this oftentimes stemmed from historical breaches of trauma that certain groups experienced. Other barriers included lack of availability and access to vaccine clinics. On the other hand, facilitators included learning opportunities that were in-person and informal, and that were offered by groups and individuals that were trusted. Other facilitators were incentives, as well as available and accessible vaccine clinics and better coordination between site staff as well, and healthcare providers to ensure the best vaccination experience for clients. And there were various findings from this needs assessment, but really it underscored the importance of integrating peer support within the vaccination promotion model. And this led to the development of our Community Health Ambassador project, where we recruit and contract shelter clients to take on delivering health promotion to their peers. And though it initially started off being focused on vaccinations, we did expand to other areas such as shingles and pneumococcal vaccinations, hepatitis A, monkeypox, harm reduction practices, STBBI testing. And through this program, we really hope to, I got a bit confused because I was looking at the screen. Can we go back?
Sure.
Thank you. So through this program, we really hope to address the misconceptions, misinformation, and mistrust that pertain to various health topics and health issues, and to facilitate the uptake of positive health behaviors among shelter clients and people experiencing homelessness. Next slide, please. So in terms of methodology, we engage in ongoing recruitment, and applicants are requested to submit a statement of interest and asked to participate in an interview. And interviews really focus on their interests pertaining to health promotion and peer work, and as well as their ideas around how to best address the health needs of their peers as well as their own. We engage them in various training and health promotion sessions. So during the onboarding session, we provide an overview, extensive overview of the roles and responsibilities, contracts, hours tracking, and compensation. And health promotion training involves going over some of the fundamentals of health promotion frameworks, behavioral change theories, and as well as how to best handle privacy and health information, conflict management, verbal de-escalation strategies, and setting boundaries. And we provide specific health promotion training, which pertain to specific health topics such as heat illness prevention, ovarian and breast cancer awareness, and diabetes, for instance. And additional supports that we provide, so before I move on to additional supports, we do provide also in-person training. So before they go on site to do the actual outreach work, they are trained by health promotion staff and nurses from our partner agencies. And they're providing an overview of best outreach strategies and practices. And oftentimes they are also trained by our more experienced community health ambassador leads. We do provide a number of additional supports, including reimbursement for travel expenses, resources. We have a community health newsletter, a virtual toolkit. We have monthly and weekly check-in meetings, and we also share external opportunities with them. So training opportunities, educational volunteer opportunities as well.
Next slide, yeah. We recognize that newcomers to Toronto, such as newly arrived immigrants, those in the refugee sector, and even those who have relocated from other parts of Canada can experience high levels of social isolation. This program gives them the chance to connect with others through their shared experiences. It gives them the opportunity to form bonds and build relationships. The Community Health Ambassador program also gives peers the ability to make interpersonal connections and mitigate social isolation. Additional training based on current health needs for peer outreach and health promotions such as COVID-19, flu, STBBI, and Mpox, pneumococcal, and shingles vaccines, as well as giving them effective tools of communication. Our next slide, in addition to the training, we also hold virtual monthly meetings. It gives peers, both past and current, a chance to connect with each other and share their experiences. It also gives them the opportunity to express any concerns or questions they may have. And we've also found that peer engagement mitigates the feeling of social isolation, building confidence in newcomers who are able to interact with others, either through outreach or health promotion, be it through training sessions or networking, both in person and virtually. So the majority of our training and onboarding was virtual. Not everyone has the same access to email, internet, or a cell phone. So it forced us to work with frontline staff at facilities where they had capacity. Peers were able to access online communications and participate in virtual meetings and training sessions. In response to monkeypox, our community health ambassadors were provided with PPE, but in order to support most of the clinic sites, they were required to wear N95s. As a way around that challenge, they needed to be fit tested, so we were able to provide mass fit testing free of charge to our peers with the help of one of our partner agencies in the public health sector, which was the Inner City Health Associates. And there were some delays in payment processing. In some cases, it was due to missing or late filed paperwork. A few of our newly arrived peers did not have access to bank accounts or financial institutions that were able to accept the payment.
Feel free to remove it if you want.
I just want to make sure the levels are good. Okay, perfect, thank you. There were some delays in payment processing. In some cases, it was due to missing or late filed paperwork. Some of our newly arrived peers did not have access to a bank account or financial institution that was able to accept the payments. And in these cases, we worked with the site leads, who are contacts at the shelter sites, and arranged to deposit the funds in their account, and they would ensure the peer received their payment.
Sorry, can you hear me? So just going over some of the lessons that we learned from coordinating this program. So this really underscored the importance of integrating peer work and specifically engaging shelter clients in health promotion delivery through their diverse experiences, relationships and connections, and knowledge and skill sets. And it really helped identify the best practices for engaging this population in health promotion delivery, and highlighted the need for more holistic supports when engaging this population, including mental health supports and employment and life skills training.
Oh, shelter The Toronto Shelter Network is coordinating the shelter sector pipeline project from homelessness to equitable work, which is a 2-year research and action project, which was launched in August of 2020. This initiative was funded by the Metcalf Foundation, and the purpose of this project is to support Toronto's homelessness sector in a collective effort to hire, retain, and promote people with lived experience of homelessness. Acknowledging that and to help organizations in the sector, including emergency shelters, respite centers, 24-hour drop-ins, and COVID hotel programs to be exemplary employers for these staff. This project has been split into 2 phases. Phase 1, or year 1, is we study what worked well in Toronto, as well as getting feedback from around the world when employing people with lived experiences of homelessness. We analyze evidence about how getting good jobs in the homeless sector benefits people who have experience and the agencies that employ them. It was used to also conduct a needs assessment to describe the staffing needs in Toronto's sector, specifically the homelessness and current state of employment in the sector for people with lived experiences, including those employed as peer workers in non-peer roles. So the same slide. Phase 2, which just ended, at this stage of the process, we will develop and test some of the tools that we've put into practice, resources or strategies that are recommended in our year 1 to make sure that they can be effectively applied to Toronto's homelessness context. We also develop and test transitional or customized job placements or job supports, and we also build networks to connect employment and training agencies with homelessness service agencies. The report and the final toolkit will be available today on TSN's website at www.torontoshelternetwork.com.
Thank you so much. And I think that email has already gone out, so if anybody is on that mailer, you can already read that report. So I'm going to talk about a couple of projects that SSHA has taken on. So the first is the Harm Reduction Advisory Group. Just going to go through the process in brief and then really focus on the lessons learned and what we can take away from it. So 2021, the 10-point plan came through Toronto Public Health for harm reduction supports and really bolstering those supports in shelters. An integral recommendation of that is that people with lived experience should be involved in the design, operations, and evaluation of harm reduction services. So that's how we got to this harm reduction advisory board of people with lived experience service users. Again, we went to our partners at TSN for the recruitment component of it. And basically what the recruitment consisted of was there were posters up in multiple shelter locations. Interested parties had to prepare a short written submission, and then they would sit down with someone from TSN, have a little interview, and then the list got narrowed down. We ended up building a committee out of that. It started in the summer. So far, it's been really useful. There's been a good amount of uptake. The people who engaged with it are very motivated and very committed to the process. I've had the minutes shared with me, and there's such good discussions happening at this table. They've been giving feedback into everything from specific harm reduction supports, admission policies at shelters, and the Toronto drug strategy. So it's really taking complex subject matter and providing input on it. So for the lessons to draw out of this, the representation can be an issue with an application-based process. There's nothing wrong with that, but just be aware what you're doing when you have an application-based process, because not everybody is going to select in, and you might miss some voices. That's okay. It's just something to bear in mind. At the same time, you also, with an advisory committee, you're looking at an ongoing commitment, so you really do need people who have that motivation. You might miss some voices because you're relying on the people who are going to keep coming to the meetings and maintain that. So things like a written component, it's got drawbacks, but it can also be a minor barrier that can just confirm that commitment is there. You don't want it to the point where it's going to, deter people, but you do want it so that somebody has to have a little bit of skin in the game in order to proceed with the process. As we mentioned before, paying people for their time and expertise is very important. When I started in the sector, I'm older than I look. There were a lot of Tim's cards floating around. I'm glad that we're generally moving away from those. Cash is king. If you can't do cash, because I know some organizational policies won't allow for that, Visa gift cards are an option. The closer you can get to giving your participants the autonomy to spend the money the ways that they want to spend the money, it just conveys respect, and it's a good way to proceed. And it also shows that you take people's time seriously, as does making sure that you go back to the people who provided you input and say, here's what we did with it. Here's how it's being implemented. Here's what we're changing because of things you said in this room to us. This is a long title for a very important project, the Black Service User Engagement to Apply an Anti-Black Racism Lens to Shelter Standards and Procedures. And the people at home are going to kill me because I keep turning away from the microphone when I look up there. So if it sounded like this, then I'm sorry. So the city's action plan to confront anti-Black racism calls on the city to understand the experience of Black shelter users when accessing shelter services and update the Toronto shelter standards to better serve Black service users. So this, again, makes sure that we have to have some engagement process. You can't do that first one, understand the experiences of people without asking them about their experiences. Now, again, we're coming from a place where we understand that we've cultivated some mistrust with many people we work with, including Black service users. So for that reason, a third-party approach was taken with the consultation, and we retained a Black consultation firm so that there would be that connection. There were 7 weeks of consultations, focus groups, interviews, and online surveys with a QR code, and I'll get to that a little bit more. In the in-person sessions, we had about 150 people participate. Online, about 120. We kept those data sets separate because there's a certain laxness with an online process where you can't verify that it was that person. I mean, I could technically go in and complete that survey online, even though I'm not a Black service user. So you want to just kind of value that, but not necessarily to the same degree as you do your in-person sessions. I will speak to some of the other things in the lessons learned because I'm just mindful of the folks from Wild Living who have lots of wonderful things to talk to you about as well. So through this process, we're expecting recommendations to come back from the consultation firm by mid-December. And the web page where that survey lived is also going to be the conduit for the share back to the participants. And they've all been provided with that information and when to expect to see that information on there. The lessons really, so one thing that this consultation group did that raised some eyebrows because there were costs associated with it was they went into shelters prior to the consultation with no ask to say, hey, here's what we're here to talk to you about. We're going to be back on such and such a date. Ask us questions. We'll answer it to the best of our ability. If we can't answer it today, we'll go back. We'll find out. Staff, get out of here. We're talking to your service users. You don't need to be part of this conversation, and we're just going to create this environment of trust so that when we come back, you're going to feel comfortable talking to us. And it worked like a charm. It cost the city money, but it worked like a charm. There was a higher rate of participation. The people who said, yeah, that sounds interesting, actually showed up. And we may have experienced people saying, yeah, I'll show up to the thing, I'll be there. And then, there's something interesting happening outside and you don't see those people. So that was a good tool that the consultants used. Participants also really appreciated staff being away from them. Even when they were saying staff is wonderful and support my needs, they really appreciated being able to do that with some privacy and away from that influence. One thing that we noted is that we missed a lot of 2S LGBTQ Black residents in this method. And the consultants conjectured that they may not have felt as safe in the environment as other residents did. So we're going to go back and we've engaged 519 and Rainbow Health to work with us to collect some additional data from Black service users that they work with. One piece that was very important too, we're talking about people's experiences of trauma. When we're talking about an anti-Black racism lens, we're talking about asking people to delve into painful topics. So in addition to compensation, which is a given, we also have to create an environment of safety. And that's something that we identified. We did some, but we could do better. So what we did was we told the service providers, hey, we might be having some difficult conversations. These folks might be a little shaky when they come out. Please be considerate of that. And then in the sessions, we had a resource list with here's some numbers you can call, here's crisis lines, here's all kinds of resources. Now, unfortunately, I don't know if it's the same in every jurisdiction, but you know, you give your clients a resource list and they call and they get busy signals, they get ringing phones that don't get picked up. The better approach that we would love to do the next time around is have a clinician, ideally a Black clinician, on site, able to support, able to do some debrief work with folks who have maybe unpacked things. We want to make sure that it's done in a safe way. So just mindful of the time. Okay, 2 more minutes. So another big advisory group that we're working on is this cross the division advisory committee. Now this is a huge undertaking. I'm not talking about this group yet because we're only at the stage of the engagement on how to go about forming this group. It's a huge undertaking, and it is part of the Homelessness Solutions Service Plan for the City of Toronto, Section 5.3, Enhancing Collaboration and Engagement. So how do you set up a system-wide service user advisory group that's representative, equitable, properly positioned, properly resourced? They have the training, they have the tools, they have the information. It's huge. So the consultation structure was taken on by our quality assurance and policy team, and they've held 6 consultations to date, 5 with service users and 1 with peers to get those perspectives. And input was collected on governance, scope of this group, recruitment practices, compensation, capacity and training required for success. So we did get some good feedback from initial consultations. We do have a proposed scope. The initiative will consist of people with current or recent shelter service use and make recommendations to planning, management, and delivery of Toronto's homelessness service systems specifically. So outside of scope is anything that there's already a mechanism for, like complaints, anything to do with service quality, not service delivery structures, would be outside of scope because there's methods for people to give feedback and about that as well. One of the things we learned here was that we went forward with the supposition that we needed to be consistent, ask everybody the same questions. That's not always going to work best because you're talking to different groups. So when you're talking to youth, the youth were all at the back of the room and like, yeah, oh, that sounds good, whatever. So moving forward, when we engage with youth, we're going to change the model a little bit, maybe have a charrette kind of, focus on a problem and bounce ideas off as in a problem solve that's more active and engages them more as opposed to, what do you think of this? Because that's not how youth work. Another gap in this work is that we realized too late, or remembered too late, that we were missing key demographics as far as Indigenous communities, Black residents. They weren't set out as a specific targeted demographic that we wanted to engage with. And like from my own experience working with Indigenous service providers, this is an old story for them. They are used to not being included until after implementation has started, and frankly, they're sick of it, is what I'm hearing back. So when you then go to somebody and say, hey, we've started this and we want to, they're not really interested in engaging with it. And that's fair and just and reasonable. So it's on us to do better. Similarly, the Black resident engagement wasn't targeted. However, one benefit kind of is that due to the overrepresentation of Black residents in our sites, the Black representation in the sessions as they were existing was about 60%. That doesn't mean that we did it properly or mindfully. It's a mitigation, but again, it's one of the lessons that the researchers identified that, this is something that we should look at more moving forward. Last thing I'll talk about is good old satisfaction surveys, and I'll skip straight to the lessons just to close off the time. So satisfaction surveys are the oldest tried and true form of engagement that we do with service providers. You know, we used to do them with paper. Here, you have to fill this out. Bring it to me when you come back. Totally disregarding that power dynamic. We've moved away from that now. So things are moving more online. And as we move through successive iterations, less and less staff involvement. So the iteration that's being worked on right now and developed proposes a model where the staff are there to read a preamble, step back and provide technical assistance if anybody needs it, and then issue an honorarium at the end, and that's it. And that just gives some greater respect and autonomy to folks. The language is huge, though. Again, there's no one population we work with, there's no one background, there's no one culture. So you really, as much as it seems like you're asking things in a clear way, without that context of body language and explaining. One example that one of the researchers developing questions gave was in a previous resident survey. They were struggling back and forth with a resident about, like, what do you mean? I don't understand what you're saying. And eventually the researcher said, is staff in your business too much? Why didn't you just say so? And they fully understood that. Now that's not gonna work for everyone, so the challenge when you're doing a written document is that you have to try and find the perfect phrasing that will transcend all of those things. And if you find a great method for doing that, please share it with the class, because it's just a long, painful process in general. So just last few things to take away, and we'll actually save questions until after While Living. But there's many ways to conduct service user engagement: surveys, focus groups, peer engagement, facilitated conversations, long-term advisory. They all have value. It just depends on what you're looking for, what type of information you're trying to collect. Whatever form it takes, it's critical that this work is happening. Again, we're leaving tons of expertise on the table every day when we don't ask people. Make sure exactly who you want the information from and what information you want and what you want to do with that information before you start. Because if you think of those questions midstream, you're going to have wasted some time. And last but not least, respect and honor your subject matter experts' time and expertise, financially, but more importantly, by using the information they share in your programs and services and letting them know how you have done so. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Everybody say wow. Wow. Yeah, now say it like you just heard something incredible. Wow. Now ask me what that stands for.
What does that stand for?
Thanks for asking. That's what it stands for. It just stands for wow. It's not an acronym. When I listen and I hear something that's inspiring, I learn something new, like my understanding gets flipped on, that's the word that was coming out of my mouth. Just like, wow. And so that's what we're using here, and I'll tell you one of the reasons why. I'm a fresh registered psychologist, okay? Psychotherapist. And some of you, I love that you're nodding your heads already. Have you heard that they've been doing studies on the awe factor since 2000? This is a real thing. This impacts people's lives. And one of the things that it does, which might sound countercultural to what we've been taught, but it causes people to have it shifts their attention away from themselves. What? And it makes us feel like we are part of something greater than ourselves. Come on. And it talks about the small self, is what psychologists are referring to, the small self. This is a good thing. Did you know that? It's a good thing to feel small. It's a great thing to feel like you're a part of something bigger. This is one of the things I love about our Indigenous people, our friends. Do you not just get a sense of humility? Oh, Dr. Ross, do you not just get a sense of like, this woman is a humble person. She gets it. She's just one link. She's not the chain, right? So this is part of the culture that we've been, it just kind of has happened, guys, really. This was not the goal. I'm just going to share some of the story of Wow Living. And as you do that, I'm hoping that maybe part of it might cause somebody in the room to go, wow. Because you know, it has physiological effects, mental health effects, positive. It even it makes you more generous, makes you kinder to other people. This is awe factor. So let me start. I got to share some of this, okay? And oh, here's the clicker. I'm going to give the clicker to Patty. It's always safer when the control is with her. She is my cousin, best friend, and we are co-creators in this. And I love that. I think it was Maria, one of the plenary session speakers yesterday, used the word co-creating, and I nearly jumped out of my skin. I'm like, yes! Because when it comes to what has gone on with this organization and working with people with lived experience, we'll just not go there. But it's co-creating. We did this together. We're not asking them for their advice in what we're doing. We're literally doing it together. And so here's what happened. Patty and I have been in the charity sector for 19 years. So we started a charity in 2000 in Bradford, Ontario. Bradford is not Toronto. So we have the blessing of small, guys, okay? It's this little spot right here. It is part of, the next slide I'll show you, it's Simcoe County. Anybody from Simcoe County? Yeah! Oh, I know you guys are, yeah. Simcoe County. We are not massive, okay? But this little part down here, that's South Simcoe. We are a part of South Simcoe, Jenny. Jenny leads the only shelter for South Simcoe. How many beds you got, Jenny? 8. Appropriate response. Right? Yeah. 8 shelter beds. So when COVID hit in April 2020, when the government said stay home, we started meeting people who were like, I'd like to. Like, where do I go? And I actually got a phone call from a friend of mine. And here's what this has started with, is listening. Anybody about listening? Just listening. So I got a phone call from a friend. She said, Jody, is there anywhere that a homeless person can get a shower in town? I was like, I don't know. No. In that entire county, not just South Simcoe, the entire county, there was not one single place where a homeless person could get a shower that we found. Were you guys open, in-person services? Like 2020, April 2020? No, yeah. I hear you though, right? Like nothing was open. And so this is one of the blessings of being in the community for 20 years. We have this really awesome relationship with our town staff. Municipal leaders, fantastic. They come and go, right? We just are experiencing a fresh batch. We love our municipal leaders, but the town staff, we've been able to build some trust with them. And so when I got the question, we were able to just email our CAO, our deputy mayor, and our mayor and just say, like, is there anywhere? Here's the situation. And get this. The deputy mayor emailed me back within 15 minutes, and he said, Jody, I was unaware that we had homeless people. How many and where? Okay. But here's the thing. You don't see it in our town. And the majority of people would answer the same way. So we were able to put this to them, but get this, ready? These are our leaders. Within 24 hours, they troubleshot this problem, and they decided they're going to open the outside access into our community center 2 days a week to provide showers. Rock on. So I thought, well, I'm going to go. I got time. So I'm going to go these two times each week, and got to listen. And friends, I'll be honest. I'm doing this work. We ran a youth center and a free clothing room for 20 years, okay? I did not know the stuff that I was learning from these guys. I did not know OW. I did not know ODSP and the amounts. And y'all know this. You've been in this for years, right? I was like, this is impossible. What do we do? And the education and awareness piece. So we ended up collaborating with cross-trainers, the food bank, community meal. How many love collaboration? Right? Bring it on, right? So we started doing meals in conjunction with the showers, and I had 2 women show up like almost every single time. 2 senior women, both on ODSP, and I'm telling you, this was it. They were running things, like picking up lunches, delivering them, helping hand them out. If I couldn't be there, they were there, and listening to people. Okay, so I got to introduce you to one of them. Do you want to meet one of them? She's a rock star. Okay, Gail Smart, come on. So this woman I've known like for over a decade through the other charity, but I'm just gonna let her share why. Why did you show up every single day during COVID? And then I know you're doing more, but why? Why do you do what you do?
Thanks, Jody.
Yeah.
My name's Gail. I'm gonna try and do this without crying, but I started out with Jody at these meals because I walked that road. I've ran into a lot of different situations in my life. I'm a single mom, raised 4 daughters, homeless too many times. It's great, you get your home, but if you don't have the proper income, then next thing you know, you're homeless again. So it always comes down to a choice, what you want to do. Are you going to put a roof over your head, clothes on your kids, or food in their stomach? And you have to make a decision. So it's really nice to wake up in the morning and not have to make those 3 decisions, to know that they are there already. So when I go to our cafe and I feed one person, I feel like I fed 1 million people. So one of the biggest things I believe in is to give back. So I didn't have much money. I used all the resources for food, everything. So now here I am. I still have 1 kid at home, grandchildren, but I go, even if I'm not on the schedule, I will go to our cafe. I talk to our people, listening. What do you need? How can I help you? And knowing that they have that meal today is great. But I feel sometimes just that they can relate. I can relate, which makes things easier for us all to relate. Some of us relate by experience. Some of us relate by, like Jody said, talking, learning, listening, understanding, compassion, willingness. Willingness just to listen to somebody who might come in, who has got the worst pair of shoes. And we had that. We had a lady come in, pair of flip-flops with a big blister on her heel, and we were like, wow. She walked all the way to Bradford from Toronto. And every story is a story, but sometimes it's just nice when they can say a story and you can say, I do understand because I did walk your shoes. I love that you can understand because page 67 of the book said, this is what she'll be or not be. And there's nothing prejudiced about me. We're all equal. I don't care what color we all are. I don't care how old you are. I don't care if you're what age you need help, if you need help, period. Just help somebody. And at the end of the day, you go put your head on the pillow and you're like, thank you. Thank you. And I became very religious over time, even though I've always had a piece of it. So, but that's it. Awesome. Thanks, Jody.
So she will be around after if you want to talk to her. So as we were listening, one of our homeless friends said, it's really expensive to be homeless in the winter. I was like, that's an odd comment. But held up the coffee cup and said, I have to pay for rent, which was different outside of COVID. So they couldn't even stay inside anywhere, even if they did get the coffee. So our thought originally was, let's see if we can offer overnight shelter. But we listened. Everybody say listen. Right. And some of our leaders said, caution, right? Let's be safe. So we thought, okay, can't do that safe enough, fast enough. What could we do? Well, the youth center space wasn't being used. So we thought, what if we did daytime, like an out of the cold cafe? They get free coffee, they can hang out, and have one meal. That was our big dream, okay? Just feed them one meal, and let's see if we can be open. Consistency, right? Consistency is a huge thing we learned through the youth center with the kids. So 7 days would be the goal. Okay, so Gail, my other friend Pam, and then some others, some core friends, we got together and we started I think on Sunday nights, we got together for months, thinking through things. How are we gonna do this safely? And then we put it out to the newspaper. Because how many staff do you need to do that sucker? 7 days a week? Come on. Originally it was 9 till 4. That's a lot, right? The newspaper put it out there, and within 2 weeks, our community responded, and we were able to be open 7 days a week, okay, during all of COVID. And We had restaurants, because we can't cook in our little kitchen. The health department, but we can serve. And we had restaurants answer the call, and we were able to provide breakfast, lunch, and dinner 7 days a week. Starbucks, who likes Starbucks? Totally addicted. Every day of the week, they donate their leftover stuff, so we're able to provide our friends with that. There's churches that jump on too. They have commercial kitchens, and they provide stuff. So the cafe only runs because of the team. And I'll tell you what, this is the beautiful part. Patty and I were away on vacation just before Thanksgiving, and I did not take my phone. Therapist speaking. Okay, shut off for 3 weeks. When I got back, I'm checking the WhatsApp group, because that's one of the things. It was an idea of one of our people. We need to work in communication. Can we have a WhatsApp group? That thing is like hopping usually, okay? And when I got back, I'm checking it. I'm like, what are they doing? They're like, we realized that we were scheduled to be closed because listen, we were only going to do November 1st, right, till April 30th. They didn't want to close. And there was extenuating services, so we've stayed open, but we do like 3 days a week during the summer. And so anyway, it worked out that we weren't going to be open on Thanksgiving Monday. Well, no. They were like, this cannot happen. Everyone's eating with their families. This is our family. So they just did it. They figured it out. They got the food. They coordinated. Like, this is this team. It's unreal. And there's a mix of stability. We talk about stability. That's the language we use. Okay? This not lived or unlived experience, people with or without. It's stability. I'll tell you what, if Patty or my mom or somebody else dies next week, ask me what my emotional stability is going to be like. Ask me what my capacity to be able to listen to people is going to be at that point. It's not going to be great. So there's going to be people on our team that at certain times in their life, they're a little bit less stable. Well, we need to, and Patty does the coordinating, the scheduling, we're going to make sure we've got a certain level of stability for each shift. Does that make sense? Yeah. So one of the rock stars that walked in that provides some incredible stability to this team was a gentleman named Derek. He just gave me the nod, yes. So Derek's going to come up, and he's just going to share why he's a part of this crew. Give this guy a hand, because I'm telling you, this guy... almost, I think 90% of every day you can wake up and on the WhatsApp group, he posts like a song of the day. Oh, come on.
Hello, everybody. My name's Derek. It's kind of new to me. I'm really nervous, but deep down, this is something I'm going to step up for. About 18 months ago, I was a very vulnerable spot. Just wasn't really realizing where things were going. Noticed something. Somehow found out about the cafe. Built up the courage to walk in there one day. This beautiful lady was sitting right there. From that moment, I just felt like I was in the right place at the right time. Something, as nervous as it was for me to walk into that door, once I felt a part of the community, it just went out. I never woke up not knowing where my days were going, what I was going to do. There was a positive light that just went in, and I was like, okay, I'm not sure where I'm going to go today or what I'm going to do. But I knew going down to the cafe was going to set a good foundation for me, and it was going to maybe take me out of my head, maybe take me wherever I was at the moment. And then so I got down there, and I didn't really even fit in socially. I wasn't sure what to do, so I started cleaning the toilets. As I started cleaning the toilets, it gave me something to do, kept my mind off of stuff. Then with the community just being there, the time, after, a week so, then it was like I was in the kitchen. Then Gail was teaching me how to do little things in the kitchen. And then, a couple weeks after that, I was in, having coffee with somebody, just sitting there building relationships. What I expected from the day I walked in, I'm not sure. But I know without walking in that day, I would never have the opportunities that I have today, financially, mentally, emotionally, just for my support. And there's so many things that they have done for me, my self-worth, my understanding of who I am, what I want out of life, and just fighting for me is a big thing to me. And I just appreciate you listening to me. And I just want to say thank you to Jody and the cafe, the group that we have. at first, I wasn't sure how it would go. The relationships I built with our friends, our clients, and the admiration I have for our volunteers and what I see them doing, it just motivates me to get off my butt and not think about it, but get out there and do it. And it's why I dressed up the best I could today. So thank you so much, guys.
Yeah. Wow. You know what I thought when Michael was introducing Dr. Ross, and he's just like, looking for people for the podcast. Would you listen to that podcast? We're going to introduce you to him later. So the cafe's run along, and we're getting ready to close the end of April. And then, okay, are you guys okay if I take some of the question-answer minutes? Is that okay? Okay. And then something happened. Can we play the video, Sarah? We'll see if this works. It's 5 minutes, okay? But it'll keep it shorter, you know? And you can see what happened in our town. Just watch. There we go. No worries. Thank you.
On March 22nd, we had a life-changing fire at 114 Holland Street here in town. 8-story apartment building. Caught fire, and all of them were displaced. One of the things that we asked these friends was, what's your housing need? Are you looking for a 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom? What do you need? And some of them actually said to us, we would live in a trailer if we had it. And I thought, okay, that's a good idea. This is March. We're going into spring, summer. Where would we put them if we could get trailers? And my first thought was, well, there's some churches in town that have land. And I reached out to Bradford Community Church.
We purchased a 5th-wheel trailer, and that's housing another couple, and then there was another trailer that was purchased, and a bathroom shower trailer, and it's crazy.
We had 2 families from that fire move into those spaces.
I'm Sheila,
And I'm Donnie.
and because of the fire, now we're here at the Bradford Community Church.
And I know this wonderful trailer that we're living in now, it's beautiful, but it's not winterized. And she does get cold up here in winter times.
There's nowhere for them to go. The rent is unbelievable. From what they were paying to what they would have to pay, it's more than double. And I will not have him and his wife living on the street. It's not gonna happen on my watch. And had I not had the opportunity and the privilege to be able to get involved in this project, I would have been blind. I would have been living in a bubble. These people need help.
So, in talking with some of the guys from the guest house, some of the men there, they had this idea of taking a park model trailer and seeing if we can winterize it, turn it into a 4-season home. So, thought that's pretty cool if it can actually work. And we have had people come alongside as advisors to help us in this process, like General Coach Canada, like Armstrong Trailers in Innisfil, people that are kind of experts in the field and know about these things to help us with building code and the things that we don't know.
I went into the trailer a couple of days ago to look at it, and what was being done in there brought tears to my eyes. And it's just a loving, caring, wonderful thing that's happening to my wife and I.
While Living is working on building these temporary safe structures for people to own. What if we can provide these homes for people as affordably as possible and see them within 3, maybe 5 years own their own home?
I'm 40 years old now. I would love to own my own home. And with the prices and everything in society for housing, that looks like it's an impossibility. But with a trailer, that looks like it's possible. And to own my own trailer, it would mean so much to me. I would be able to have my own garden, my own yard, deck, you know, have friends over and call it home. And that would mean so much to me, for sure.
We never thought about that,
Thought of it what?
ever owning anything like a home. It's something Donnie and I, for some reason, never thought about. And to think that that could happen, wow, just puts a big smile on your face.
It's a big wow, yeah.
We're lucky here in West Mulberry that while living is in our community, and that we've seen the results that you're able to bring forward. And I think for other municipalities, for other towns, for other cities, elected officials have to realize they can't do it all themselves. They have to reach out for volunteers and people that just have that sense that they want to help people. And I think there's people like that in every town, and it's just a matter of finding those people and getting them to get a group together to volunteer and to help out in whatever way is possible.
So I could talk about this project all day long, but that gentleman, Doug, he had the van shirt on at the guest house. So the guest house, the town came to us, our deputy mayor came to us during COVID 2020 and said, we have a house, we've got a house, it's scheduled to be demolished down the road. You guys can use it for $2 a year if you can make something of it. So, sure, yeah, I didn't do it that quickly, right? Safe. Prayed and thought about it and looked into insurance and all these things because while living at this time was a sole proprietorship. So whose neck was on the line? So that's another thing. Come talk to me. So we opened this house, but the community came together, and we could tell you story after story. They renovated this place, they furnished this place, and we had 9 men come through in the period that it was open. But these 4, Doug and 3 others, there's a picture of them. These are the men that came up with this idea. And when it comes to cultivating a culture of lived experience, leadership, ever say leadership? They have to lead. That's not me, that's them, right? We can co-lead, we can co-create. And so these guys came up with the idea, and I think a really important thing in the culture is don't steal their idea. Don't take credit. This was their idea. I partnered with some connections and things like that, and we worked our way through this thing, but it's working, guys. So if you want information on this program, we're calling it Truly Affordable, because the idea is we don't think that housing is truly affordable if it doesn't fit into their shelter portion. So how do you do that? Well, the church is a pretty cool option because they don't pay taxes. They're only charging us $2 a year. And so those are big costs. We can tap into their septic. We're drilling a well and running electric, so we'll have our own meters. Talk to me if you're interested in this. What we're working hard to do is package this. I'm not interested in doing another one. We'll do the first one, and we will give it away. And our municipal leaders are dedicated to seeing this project go through. They've called it an innovative. When we first talked to them about it, they said, we are committed to meticulously working with you on this project. And it has been hard. Ask me if it's been hard. Oh, I just said it, okay? It's been long, but it's working. So one more wow factor. And then, so one of the people that is a leader that came alongside that I got to know because of this project showed up one morning when we were working on a unit for Donnie and Sheila, actually, to move into temporarily. And he just came by, a common person connected us, and we were just only supposed to have like, half an hour conversation. But thank the Lord, one of our contractors couldn't show up that day. But guess what this guy does? Come on. I'll just let him tell you, right? Like, he had all of his tools in his truck, and he's like, I can stay. But why? Why did you stay that day, and why have you continued to stay? Nathan Harris.
Thank you. I absolutely can stay, and I intend to stay to the finish line. A little bit about myself. I'm Nathan, I'm 21 years old, and I'm recovering from homelessness. I became homeless after giving up the room I rented to my sister, who left a physically and mentally abusive boyfriend. Most people would say, why don't you just share the room with your sister? If your sister was sold into the sex trade at 15 years old like mine was, you would want her to have her own space. So I guess I'm homeless. When I was homeless, I was constantly fighting a battle with the odds stacked against me. I knew I had to keep my spirits high and I had to stay strong to solve this problem. There's a stigma you face when you're homeless. In job interviews, I had to hold myself together and pretend like I was not living at life's edge. I got a new job, and I was driving home from work. Not home. I was driving back from work, a little bit too excited to share the good news. I was going 120 kilometers an hour when I flipped my car end over end and fractured C7 in my neck. Now I'm helpless and homeless. For 14 days, I was physically confined to that homeless shelter bed in excruciating pain. I thought to myself, this could make or break me. I could push through and become stronger than ever before. Something inside me told me not to give up. I listened to books on mindset and self-development. As I healed my body, I healed my mind. I enrolled myself in a paid program called Base for Success, and they teach me job skills. I used all of my money to save up and buy myself a new car so I could get back to that new job. I worked tirelessly to save up for a place to rent, but I kept falling short. I was caught in a poverty trap. I spoke up about my situation and was recommended to another program called Homes Now by CMHA. They helped me get my first and last paid for and subsidize my rent to something more realistic. Now I tell you all of that so you can understand why I work with WOW Living. I work with WOW Living because when I was helpless and homeless, somebody came to save me. A program came to save me. At WOW Living, I get the opportunity to help others and see tangible results of how my help has changed someone's life. I was at rock bottom, and these programs were my rope to climb back up. I want to throw that rope down to as many people as possible so they can climb back up from that place we call rock bottom. Thank you.
How old are you, Nathan? 21 years old. We started cross trainers when I was 22. Boom. You got us beat, bro. So I could go on. I'm not going to, but I do want to just say this. Anybody ever heard of Carl Rogers? Yeah. He's a psychologist. Here's a picture of the very end of him. He was born in, I think, 1905. And at the very, oh, she's got to slip through everything. Anybody ever heard of client-centered work? This guy is the one that came up with the theory, client-focused therapy, okay? We owe this to this man. But get this, that non-judgmental listening cycle, you're familiar with this, right? Like self-motivated, things like this. So this gentleman, he was at his prime, same age I am, okay? When the war ended, World War II. And you know what was cool? Not cool. But the need for people that had this, they needed help. The mental health crisis was like maxed out. People are coming back from the war, the trauma from the war. There were not enough therapists to meet the need. And there wasn't time to go and send everybody to school to, beef up the number of professionals there to meet that need. But they came to Carl Rogers and said, yours is teachable. We can teach people how to do this that don't necessarily need a master's degree. We can teach people how to listen really well, how to help, how to be an advocate. And so they had training centers that popped up all over, and that's what they did. This is a real example of how they met the need just after World War II. Does this sound familiar at all, like COVID? We saw helplines increase by 1,000%. Incredible need. I would submit, and so many, right? Like we're already doing this, the peer support, just training them, equipping them, being there, walking together, not them, walking together, right, to help people. We're seeing it happen. This is fully volunteer organization. The county actually just asked us to provide the overnight extreme cold warming shelter, like the drop-in. So we're stepping cautiously into that. We've said yes. So this is the first time ever we've had funding. All of these people are part of the contract working team that has stepped out. We have 15 people that are going to join that are on that team. So first time, though, we've been able to pay people. So it's exciting for us. Anyway, thank you for your time. I think there's like another 15 minutes left where we can do some questions and answers. So we don't have a moderator, so we can just team up on this. Yeah? Okay. Who's got a question? Sir.
This one's for the city.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm interested, two questions. I'm interested in your, the training program and the employment program that you're doing now in phase one. So you're starting to hire residents or peers into shelter service work?
Talking about the pipeline program, yeah?
Yeah, the pipeline program.
I will yield the floor to Maisha to talk about that one.
So,
Or Edward, sorry.
so basically what I want to know is what services are you actually hiring into? You're at phase two now, right? So I imagine that the pilot, you're already started to hire some peers or residents in some of the services, right?
That's correct. In response to the pipeline project year two, TSN ourselves have already seen policy changes. It's enabled us to hire 2 peers for the organization. The goal of the pipeline project, though, is to get peers into the homeless sector, to be able to work in the shelters and respite centers as well as the drop-in centers. So if you check the website for the Toronto Shelter Network today, the final report and the finished toolkit should be available on the website, and that lists a wealth of information of tools that we used and different methods we used to find out what the needs were in the homeless sector itself.
Okay, the second part of that is, have you guys looked at or considered doing a pilot within the shelter system? Like you were saying, you have so many resources and expertise within the shelters. Has the city considered or even looked at doing pilots around, like, let's say, right now you're outsourcing your cleaning services or your cooking services or whatnot. Has the city looked at anything like, why aren't we using residents or with expertise and experience? And I guarantee you, I can walk into any shelter or respite and pick out people who are experts or had their own cleaning businesses or have been chefs or whatnot. Why are we not? And this could help develop their skills, and they can also provide training to other residents to keep that an ongoing, rather than outsourcing somewhere else.
So sorry, just to summarize that for people who need the microphone to hear it if they're not in the room. So the question was, is the city working towards sourcing not just the expertise in homelessness per se, but also the skills that exist in shelters from other careers that shelter residents have had and still possess those skills? I hear it. So I will say I prepared certain pieces of what's been done to date. I can definitely take that back. It's a great suggestion, and I would be surprised if it hasn't been floated around before. But let me not say what I don't know and take it back and make sure that it's getting attention from the right people.
I just want to add to that. I
Yeah.
actually coordinate a program, a peer support program at CART, that was a response to a
So, and just, what organization is that? Right, okay, so just someone noted that Parkdale Activity Recreation Center does have a pilot project where they're having shelter residents work in shelters in different capacities. Yeah. I saw that first, yeah. Yeah.
I just wanted to ask a question just with regard to one of the slides you had earlier. I think it was the Health Ambassador Program. One of the challenges on there was around some staff resistance. I was just curious to know what that staff resistance was and how you guys dealt with that.
Yeah. So the question was around staff resistance to the Health Ambassador Program.
Staff resistance, sorry about that. That was pertaining to the vaccination promotion work in particular. So, sorry about that. There was some resistance when it came to supervising and providing support on site. And there was also some questions about the pay because there were some concerns that even though it was 16 hours of work, that the health ambassadors were getting paid more than some of the staff at the site. So that was some areas, some sources of the resistance. And there was just reduced capacity given, the pandemic and just other staffing challenges. And one way we mitigated that challenge was by doing direct recruitment. So initially we were recruiting through the sites. So we were really relying on the staff to refer clients who they thought would be appropriate for the role. And then we moved on to disseminating posters and flyers and asking them to connect with us directly. And now we provide direct support in collaboration with our partner agencies, such as the Inner City Health Associates and Toronto Public Health. I'm not sure if that answers your question. Did you have any follow-up questions? Yeah. Yeah. So that was an exception. So we unfortunately couldn't proceed with the program at that specific site. But later, when there was that direct recruitment that we were doing, we did have ambassadors who were able to connect with us directly and be employed. So another change that took place over the course of our program was that initially the peer health ambassadors were providing support with vaccination efforts at their respective sites, and then now it's more mobile. So they may provide support at their respective sites that they're staying at, but also other sites in the city. So yeah. Anyone? Okay, go ahead.
Thank you very much. Can I just point out too, I don't know what your follow-up's going to be, but again, we have the benefit of small. Yes. And starting that way. Yes. So,
And then
See how absolutely kind of still not gonna go easy, but.
It's fine. It's fine.
So this is a call in, not a call out, it's a call into the city. I know you're just one representative of it.
Mm-hmm.
I hear you're endorsing really important things, right? Important things like satisfaction surveys and the importance of ensuring that that's accessible, that there's analysis done for that, the importance of honorariums. It's
Well, thank you for that, first of all. I don't know if I can capture all of that, but just again, for the benefit of people who didn't necessarily hear that, I'm grateful to be called in on the highlighting that the resources are not equal across the board, and they have not been for a long time. Prior to working for the city, I worked for the nonprofit sector and dealt with the day-to-day challenges of that. So it's very well heard and appreciated. I'm mindful that, like anything I say right now, I don't want to be speaking from both sides of my mouth, as you phrased it. I will say that in every unit that I work with in the shelter division, there is daily advocacy for that core funding, not only for work that we're doing directly, but also for our purchase of service providers as well. That's not an adequate answer, because I know that, you know, I'm here as me, and then my team, and then the shelter division, and then the city. And those all have different roles to play in that advocacy. And they are working on things, and there have been movements, and there are plans to level the playing field over the next few years. But bottom line, your point is well taken, that it is not a level playing field for many of our purchase of service providers, and not even just shelter providers, but secondary and tertiary supportive services that are still essential to our service sector. So thank you so much for that. Yes, thank you.
The inclusion of lived experience is fairly underutilized in my community. And I've worked somewhere where it was overutilized as well in what I perceived as really damaging ways to service participants and to the people with lived experience themselves. So, and in my current position, some of the hesitancy is around getting into those positions and tokenizing people with lived experience. So just for all the speakers, how would you suggest, what are some ways to avoid tokenizing people when including them and their lived experience in your leadership?
I'm going to, so the question is how to engage with people with lived experience in ethical ways that avoid tokenization. And with the spirit of that question, I'm going to defer to people with lived experience to respond first to that if they wish to.
They're asking like how, that would be a great idea. How does it feel like it's a token position for, you know what I mean? Like, I feel even bad like centering you guys out. Because, like, so for myself, okay, so 30, oh yeah. So 30 seconds to think of an answer, okay? And while they're thinking, I think it starts in the heart. Like, I'm fully convinced that we cannot run this without, and I also have lived experience, which is like such a sexy thing to say. You know what I mean? It's stupid, but do you guys have an answer? Okay, come.
I don't think it's as much about tokenization. I think it's more so a perception that we bring to the table. And I think that perception is very valuable. You know, I might not have lived it as hard as some others has lived it, but I see that perspective of what it's like to be down in those trenches. And I want to be able to bring that perspective to the table so that we can help and cater to those needs rather than, you know, taking a perspective where we don't see everything. I'm bringing that perspective up to the table so that we can make sure that the ends are met for the people that have been in that perception. Thank you.
Anybody else? Sir?
So connecting with that, I've been really thinking since I've been at this conference, how to support my agency to work on structures that provide leadership positions and experiences to the folks with lived
So this gentleman, for people online, if you haven't left, what organization from? Dixon Hall. Oh, awesome. Is looking for how do we support people with lived experience to be able to take on leadership positions? Would that be fair? Okay, so we're only 2 years in, okay, admittedly. And so I think a lot of what we're trying to do is to listen, and then it's a lot of work, let's just be honest. It's a lot of work to have conversations, spend time with people, listen, and it gets messy. It gets messy because lived experience, AKA trauma, that's very messy in life. And so a lot of time listening, a lot of time mentoring, but training, equipping, and then honestly, risking with some safety nets, right? Like, so yes, come on the team, but we're gonna make sure that there's other people scheduled that if you don't show up or your addiction is in action that day, there's other people that are gonna step in, they're gonna be there, it's gonna be okay, programs are gonna run, and then we need to have a follow-up conversation, check in, listen again. It just takes a lot of time, it's a lot of work, and I understand why it doesn't happen. Because what are we all short on right now? Time and staff and money, okay? Right? So I think it takes time and it takes staff, and those are the things that we don't have right now, so it's super hard, right? Okay, I'm sure that, yeah, you can maybe have lunch with people, but thank you for coming.